Welcome to the recording of the web meet on spasticity and its physiotherapeutic management. This presentation was made on 21st March 2021 by Dr. Melita Menezes Rodriguez and hosted by Stroke Support India. A short note on Stroke Support India. The mission of Stroke Support India is to raise stroke awareness and to help stroke survivors and their families. And to this intent, we organize web meets and other activities on topics that concern the stroke affected. This web meet is part of the same efforts. You can find us on various social media channels, and of course at our own website, which is strokesupport.in. A few words about Dr. Melita Menezes Rodriguez. She is an Masters in Physiotherapy Neurosciences from KEMH Mumbai, certified in neurodevelopmental techniques. Also a member of Indian Federation of Neuro Rehabilitation and has strong over 9 years experience in rehabilitating people with neurological disorders such as stroke, Parkinson's, cerebral palsy, children with development disorders, spinal cord injury, and rare neurodegenerative conditions. She also helps alleviate pain in those with musculoskeletal disorders such as frozen shoulder, knee pain, arthritis, spondylitis, spinal disc injuries, etc. This was a very comprehensive presentation on various aspects of spasticity, which we will be presenting in short on the next slide. Discussions in this web meet were on what is spasticity, why, when, and how should it be treated, stages of spasticity, positive and negative signs of spasticity. Spasticity is not static, when to address spasticity, various means of reducing it, goals of physiotherapeutic management, which is mainly optimize motor recovery, neuroplasticity, aims of physiotherapy, the various physiotherapeutic treatments available, some examples of postures, weight bearing exercises in functional positions, some words on constraint induced movement therapy and functional electrical simulation, mental practice and mirror therapy, discussions on latest machines to help, splints and braces, common positions in spasticity and how to manage them, various adaptations and simple exercises, triggers of spasticity, and monitoring progress in spasticity. So, overall, a comprehensive presentation. Of course, we could not go into details in the time available, but they do provide a good idea of what spasticity is to the layman.
Trunk to your leg to your hips, and they give them the signals to move accordingly. The stroke affects these nerve signals, and hence your arm and your leg are unable to move, and they develop spasticity. There are stages of spasticity. When somebody has had a stroke, an acute stroke that has just happened, or a brain injury that has just happened, the first thing you would see is what we call as flaccidity. Now, flaccidity is the body being very loose, the limbs being very loose. The person is unable to move them, but also they're not stiff or they don't resist being moved by another person. As time goes by, there's a gradual onset of spasticity, which is also occurring because the brain is healing, remodeling, the damaged tissue is getting fibrotic, and all of those changes that are occurring in the brain. The spasticity may increase over a period of time, it may decrease, or it may remain the same. It is important to understand that spasticity has certain positive signs and certain negative signs. What happens is most of us always observe these positive signs of spasticity. which is increased muscle tone, which is the increased tightness of the muscle, the increased bending of the hand and of the leg. You see increased tendon jerks. But spasticity is also accompanied by certain negative signs. These negative signs are weakness. The person is unable to lift the hand themselves. They are unable to move the hand themselves. Individual finger movement, gentle finger movements, fine motor movements, they are reduced. And also there is increased fatigability. The tiredness that occurs within the patient. They feel tired even when they do the slightest movement. Doing a minor movement takes a lot of energy out of them. This is true for stroke patients, and these are the negative signs of spasticity. Spasticity is something that is not static, like we discussed earlier. As the brain faces the damage and as it begins to heal, the spasticity changes. Day by day, week by week, month by month, we see an alteration in the kind of spasticity. It might be more, it might reduce. Also, there is that underlying weakness along with the spasticity. Because of the weakness, the person does not tend to move the hand. So, because the hand is weak, the hand will remain in this position. The hand will not be able to come up. As the hand remains in this position for a longer and longer period of time, the wrist and the muscles tighten up so that now it is not possible to straighten out. It's not possible to get it straight. It just remains. Now, this will cause a deformity. This may cause pain. And this eventually lowers quality of life for the patient. Now, we need to understand when do we address this spasticity. Spasticity in itself is just a sign or a symptom of a stroke or a disorder that is affecting the brain. But when does spasticity affect the person? The spasticity affects the person when, because of the spasticity, I'm unable to use my hands for function, my hands for eating, hands for holding things. When the spasticity is so much in my legs that I cannot get up and stand, that I cannot walk. That is when spasticity affects function, and that is when it definitely needs treatment. Spasticity will also need treatment when it is interfering with the person's sleep. At times, spasticity might get too much. The tightness, the stiffness gets so much that the person is in pain, in discomfort. This pain and discomfort is quite real. It interferes with sleep, and also the tightness is because the fingers may not be able to open. There's difficulty to be able to clean these web spaces, these areas. There's difficulty to maintain hygiene. The caregiver also is not able to, clean their hands. They may develop sores. They may develop infections. All these are the timings when spasticity needs to be addressed and managed. Spasticity is not addressed only by one person or by one specialty. So there is to be an individualized treatment program. For the individualized treatment program, the patient and the caregiver will decide what are the factors in their life that are getting affected by this spasticity. Is it walking? Is it hand function? Is it talking? Is it sitting? What are the functions? Is it sleep? Is it pain? We will discuss this with their neurologist, with a neurosurgeon if need be, with their physiotherapist, their speech therapist. And this team together will decide what is the best way to manage this spasticity. This whole team together, what is their main goal of managing this spasticity? It is not just relaxing the hand, it's not just making it loose, but it is making it capable of function, of being able to hold things, of being able to eat by yourself, of being able to dress, or just giving comfort. These are all functional improvements, and this is when we target spasticity effectively. Spasticity can be treated by all of these methods, can be managed by all of these methods. Physical therapy is a lot dependent, and physical therapy is also interconnected with all of these other treatments. There is oral medication, there is intrathecal baclofen, there is Botox therapy, there are surgeries. So the physiotherapist, who might be someone who follows you up more continuously, will have to monitor your spasticity, monitor how it's affecting function, and then take a decision along with you, your caregiver, family, and your neurologist and the entire team to decide how best we can optimize motor recovery. The goal of a physiotherapist in managing a person who has stroke and subsequent spasticity is optimizing motor recovery. That is, making you able to do things you could do before you had the stroke. We're going to try our best to get you capable of performing functions to the best of your possible ability. So in physiotherapy, we see the possibility, not the problem. We don't see a person having stroke as just having spasticity, but we see the person having a certain life, a certain lifestyle, hobbies, work, tasks. What do they like to do? Where do they like to go? How do they like to dress? Figuring out all of those possibilities and trying your best to merge what is the present capability to being able to do all that you like. So we always tend to see the possibility in every situation. Now, if we understand from the beginning of the slide that we discussed, that spasticity did not originate in the hand or in the leg. Spasticity originated in the brain because there was a damage or a disruption of certain neuron supply and blood supply in the brain. So we need to work on the brain to basically improve your body functions. This is a newly studied topic, neuroplasticity. Scientists, researchers are still working on this topic, and this is a very hopeful topic for recovery and rehabilitation. As of now, what we know about the brain, we believed it was static, but now we know that the brain is very plastic, which means that it has an ability to learn, to relearn, and to improve. For this, it needs to follow certain principles. The principles are as in listed here. So the first one is use it or lose it. If you have a particular function that you need to improve at, you need to keep doing it. If you have a certain movement that you know and that you can do, the more you do it, the more it will stay with you. If you stop doing it, you will lose it. Similarly, the more you use it, you improve it. When you learn a skill, the more you practice, the better you get it, the faster you get at it, the more skilled, the more fluent, the more subconscious it gets for you. So this is what is usage and improvement. When we talk about specificity, here we have to be very, when we're dealing with the brain, we should understand that the brain does not just remember movement, but the brain remembers action. So if I'm thinking, everyone of you can think of trying to reach for a glass. You will see that your hand automatically molds to the shape of the glass. That is how specific your brain is. So even when you're doing physiotherapy exercises, you need to be very specific about the function that you're planning to improve. Are you planning to improve holding a glass and drinking? Are you planning to improve eating? Are you planning to improve brushing? And you need to work on each individual task specifically to see a better improvement. Repetition matters. This is one of the most toughest things because we tend to do things for a very short period of time and then we give up or we get bored or we feel it doesn't show any effect. But that's not true. It's just that we need a lot more of repetition for something to get going. So you need somewhere around 500 to 5,000 repetitions of a task to learn it, to relearn it properly. Again, in this intensity also matters. So it's not important, it's not okay to just repeat it once a day or 10 times a day and then do it at that less intensity. The intensity, the more you can practice, the more hours, the more time you can put into, it gets better results. Again, we need to remember an important part of spasticity where fatigability is a true and very real situation that patients with stroke deal with. So you need to balance out the intensity as well as the tiredness of the person and make them work accordingly. Do not overtire the person. Timing matters. Salience matters. Salience is what is important to me as an individual. A person who likes music might improve faster if you make him work and practice on music rather than on anything else. When something is important to me mentally, I'm more motivated, more enthusiastic. I will focus on it better. I will practice it much more, and that will help me improve. And salience matters. Age matters. It's not a bad sign for people who are increased in years. It just means that you will have to practice a lot more in order for the learning to happen equally well. But learning happens at every age, right from childhood, right up to the time you go away. Learning will always happen. You just might need much more practice. Transference. When you learn one particular skill in one particular environment, it will also transfer to you being able to do that skill in other environments. Say if you learn transferring from a chair to a wheelchair, you will also learn to transfer from the bed to the dining table chair or from the dining table chair to the wheelchair. So your brain will learn to transfer those skills from one situation to another. Interference. What happens is when you learn a skill, you need to be very specific, very focused, and do it the correct manner. If you tend to make mistakes or if you tend to not learn it with as much focus, then the learning circuits that need to be formed in the brain, they get interfered and then your learning process is slow. Okay. So in summation of neuroplasticity, the best way I would be able to explain it to you is as if we are forming new circuits, a new pathway. Think of a kacha road on which people walked by over and over months, over and over years, and that is how fixed pathway is formed. Then that pathway is kind of fixed. So that's how neuroplasticity works. You repeat a function correctly, time after time, with good intensity, with meaning, and then that pathway is fixed in your mind, and then you will be able to learn. Any questions up to now on to what we have been discussing and neuroplasticity or spasticity, and then we can come to the physiotherapy management of this topic. Any questions?
Ma'am, if you can take I this three aspects: salience, transference, and interference again, just to
Okay.
just to be more clear on that. Yeah.
Any other questions from any of the members in the Zoom meeting? So as I've said, we can discuss about salience. Salience is what is important to you as an individual. As a physiotherapist, when I go to see my patients and I take that initial first day assessment, I don't only look at okay how much spasticity do they have, how much tightness do they have. That gives me very little information about the person. What I ask them is, what did you like to do? What were your hobbies? What were your interests? So, if like I said, if there's someone who likes to play music, I would try to teach him hand function by using the musical instrument because that is something he's already learned. That is also something that he likes and that is important to him. So the brain is much more conducive to learning what you already like, what you already are motivated about. So it's important to find those aspects of you know training a person or teaching the brain to learn a new skill, a new activity. When we talk of transference, we teach we cannot possibly teach you every possible physical activity. Right? If I teach you to get up from a chair, I can teach you to get up from a chair. But does that ensure that you will be able to get up from every other chair? Does that teach you that you will be able to get up from a sofa or that you will be able to get up from a car? Yes, that happens. The more you practice it, the more you practice in variable environments, in variable situations, you are able to learn and that skill gets transferred to being able to perform in different environments, under different situations, under different conditions. That is transfer. When we talk about interference, it means that if one day you are standing up, but you don't really focus, so you are either holding on to something, or you are falling over, or you are not doing it correctly, the way you want to be focused, placing your feet firmly on the ground and get up. That means that circuit will not be formed through. There will be breaks in that circuit in your brain. So you might not be able to learn the task correctly. That's when your progress or learning a skill will get hampered. Does that help? Can we go on?
Okay, I think yeah, that is clear. There's one question from Bharatji.
Mm-hmm.
He says, "What is the relationship of spasticity with
Mm-hmm.
sleep?" I'm not very clear as to what it is, but maybe Bharatji can add to that. What does spasticity have to do with sleep? Bharatji, आप maybe you can elaborate. आप उसमें कुछ बोलना चाहेंगे?
Does Bharatji want? So, when I spoke about spasticity interfering with sleep, what I said is that spasticity might be continuous in your body. So the body might be stiff throughout even the night, and then you won't get a relaxed sleep. That is what the relation is. In some patients, when they sleep, their body is completely relaxed, so that's a different situation. But mostly, spasticity also keeps on occurring in sleep, and then the body keeps on getting tight, and patients can't get that rest and sleep, which is required also for brain healing and for brain, recovery. We always ask patients with stroke to take enough rest even during the day. So, like I said, fatigability is a very true, real situation in them, so they should take enough rest between activity. If they don't get rest, either because of spasticity or for any other reason, the recovery and healing is also seen to be slow. Does that help, Bharat?
Yes, I think yes, he has understood. He raises his hand. I just wanted to add or maybe add to that. Uh, so what I understand, if a person gets less sleep, he will have spasticity, more severe spasticity. How do you how do you say this is the balanced sleep, 6 hours, 8 hours? How do you determine that? Is there a some idea how
So,
to do that?
no. If you say that less sleep will cause you more spasticity, no. Spasticity is determined by the level of damage that has already occurred in the brain. There is no external control over spasticity. We cannot.
Okay.
But waking, so when a person wakes up from sleep, there is a certain freshness that you feel. Your mind feels more clearer. Your mind is not foggy. You are able to pay attention when you wake up in the morning and you're fresh. That is when we would call it as to be a good night's sleep. Usually we try and see is the person able of paying good attention. Usually patients with who've had a stroke might have difficulty paying attention if they have not had enough rest. So the moment they do an activity, they're doing it well, and suddenly we see them not being able to perform it to the best of their ability. That's the time we stop. We ask them to rest, either sleep or rest. Those are the ways that you can determine whether the person has had enough rest or sleep.
Okay. Okay, there's another question from Jagdeep ji. She says, can a patient with vascular dementia and can he be helped with these kind with some techniques to lessen spasticity? Vascular dementia is there, and uh,
Mhm.
maybe stroke is also occurring.
Okay. Okay. So as far as neuroplasticity has been going, like I said, it is a newly being researched topic. A lot of its research has been done on athletes, on normal individuals learning a new skill, and that's where we've understood that okay, the brain is not static; we're able to learn at every age. But also, recent studies in neuroplasticity are being done in patients in whom the brain is affected, like you said, by either vascular dementia, by stroke, by multiple sclerosis, by various conditions that could affect the brain. In those conditions, also the effects of neuroplasticity are seen. The brain is able to learn. But like I said, it might take longer. It might take a lot more repetitions. It might take a lot
Mm,
more
mm,
intensity.
mm.
So that is how we need to balance it out. The way we know that neuroplasticity is working is when we are working for a particular skill or a particular task. That's how we can know, okay, is the person able to learn it and how long does it take? Neuroplasticity is very task specific. You need to be doing functional tasks for this learning to happen. Only by doing movements, neuroplasticity will not, it will occur by doing tasks.
Also, I was reading somewhere about neuroplasticity itself,
Mhm.
that even an action cannot be performed. Visualization also helps. If you can very strongly visualize that. Do you
Yes.
see that happening? Do you suggest that to your patients also?
So we'll be coming to them to those topics in the slides further that we have that we are addressing physiotherapy, and I will explain to you in detail about those
Okay, fine.
treatments.
Fine. There is one question that Mr. Adams has put in, maybe or later. It says some colleagues they argue the spasticity increases with age. I have, I'm 60 years old and I have some stroke related issues versus I'm 80 years old and I have stroke related issues. The level of spasticity will differ in those two. Does that happen? Do you see that happening?
I don't think it is only age that is playing a role in how much spasticity. Spasticity can be directly correlated mostly with the level of damage that is occurring, not
Okay.
with age.
Hmm. Hmm. Fine. I think we can move further. Thank you. Yeah. Jitendra ji ka question, will come back to it later. We can go to the.
So if anybody needs any clarification in
There's
Hindi,
just
then
one.
please.
Maybe we can take Jitendra ji question. He says, "Is spasticity affected by cold?"
Correct. We will be coming to those situations. Spasticity does have certain triggers in the people who have already had a stroke. So if you have had a stroke or any brain injury where you already have spasticity, that spasticity will be triggered by certain situations, which is infection, which is cold, which is pain, discomfort, in women, even menstruation. So these conditions will increase the spasticity for that, that period of time. Any illness will increase the spasticity at that period.
Fine. I think we can move further. Yeah. Mhm.
Now, what does a physiotherapist do, or what are the exercises targeted when a physiotherapist attends to a person with stroke and who has spasticity? So, one of the aims of physiotherapy is to prevent or treat contractures. What this means is, I know for a fact that a person with stroke, if he has a spasticity where his hand is beginning to close slowly by slowly, I need to be able to do movements that open up the hand. Okay. In case I allow that spasticity to continue and go into this position, it will be very difficult for any other treatments later to have an effect. So preventing and treating contractures is a very important part of physiotherapy. Maintaining skin hygiene, monitoring the skin hygiene, this is again very, very important because due to the spasticity, there are so the elbow joints kind of get bent up. Okay, so it's difficult to be able to clean in these particular areas. Similarly, for the legs get bent, so it's difficult to clean in those particular areas. Any skin breakdowns, pressure ulcers, etc., will cause pain to the patient, will cause discomfort, and as a result, they will cause an increase in the spasticity in that area. So you need to be careful. Positioning. We're going to discuss this in more detail. So positioning of the patient in a bed, in a chair, all of these will play an effect into how the body can prevent these deformities, and also how the spasticity can be kept in a little control. Weight bearing exercises. Weight bearing exercises are extremely important. One, they're extremely important for the lower extremity so as to prevent bone deterioration, osteoporosis, as well as maintain the muscle length and also activate the muscles to work, the way they should be, the weight bearing muscles of the legs, their weight of your entire body. So these weight bearing exercises are important. We'll come to a few images in a few slides. Orthotics are important. Orthotics are splints or braces that can be prescribed so that body position can be maintained, muscle length can be maintained, and your contractures are prevented. The two most important aims of your physiotherapy that we discussed: movement in functional patterns. The brain learns, the brain relearns, and the brain can repair itself only if it is learning function, if it is learning things and activities that are important to the individual. Learning activities like eating by yourself, drinking by yourself, combing your own hair, wearing your clothes. All of these have give us an inner sense of confidence, of self-esteem. So we have this tendency of doing everything for the patient, doing everything for them because we feel bad for them, but that is counterproductive. We need to be able to assist them, help them, and let them perform these areas to the best of their abilities. Also train them to be able to perform them because this brings out the maximum results. Also strength training. Like we discussed, what you see of spasticity is the increased tone. What you don't see is the underlying weakness. So there is a lot of weakness that has come into the patient's lives, into the muscles. This weakness needs to be targeted by strength training. Again, all of the aims that we discussed, all of those actions and exercises that we do are focused towards optimizing motor recovery of the patient. It's not just relaxing the spasticity or letting spasticity go or just letting the deformity not occur. We have to eventually optimize motor recovery. The physiotherapy treatments that are relevant. So we discussed passive movements. What passive movements would be is opening the arms. So opening and doing complete movements so that the entire range of the joint is maintained. Vibration is also used. Certain therapeutic devices are used to give vibration to the patient on the muscles that are spastic in order to relax them. Ice application can also be used, but there's a specific way in which ice application is used. There is specific muscles over which this should be used. So all this is individualized for the particular person, and all these are supposed to be passive methods of physiotherapy. They help to reduce the spasticity, but like you can see, they're not really working on the brain. They're more working on the parts of the body just to relax them. There is positioning, splinting. We'll see all of these in the further. So this is the positioning that we were discussing about. The shaded part, the dark shaded part is the affected part. So you can see how simple equipment like pillows and a chair and table at home can be used to position the arms, forearms, the leg, the thigh, the foot in such a way that they do not get contracted, they do not develop deformities, they do not develop pain, and this helps to maintain the range in all of these positions. Go to the next slide. Here again, when a stroke happens, usually a person loses weak strength or gets this weakness on one side of the body. What this causes is an imbalance. So a person from being here will start to bend to one of the sides because there is weakness on one side and one side is strong. What we need to maintain is this balance and symmetry. So that is what the image above is showing, and they're showing how they use a pillow and a simple, a plywood cutout on a chair to maintain the position of symmetry. Here, we're discussing weight bearing exercises in functional positions. If you can see the gentleman on the top, so his right hand, the hand that is by his side, is his affected side. What he is doing is like his weight bearing on that hand, while he's reaching with his good hand towards the other side. So it could be reaching to taking something. Now, this is an extremely good exercise because it's not just working on his hand, it's also working on his leg, where he's weight bearing on his leg, on his hand as well as rotating his trunk, which is a very good exercise to bring symmetry in the body. If you can see the lady on the right, so she's holding this chair, so that's giving some amount of weight bearing on her hands. She's standing on her left foot, so that is the affected side, and you're getting weight bearing through that leg while she's trying to move the right side. The more skilled you get, then you can be doing the other side as well. You can see the physiotherapist trying to help this elderly woman walk. So she's made to hold a railing on both sides. This is not only for balance, but this is also to give weight bearing through that upper limb, maintain the body in a neutral alignment, and help her walk. So these are a few examples of weight bearing exercises. Now this is constraint induced movement therapy. Again, the criteria for this kind of exercises is very specific. By specific, we mean that there should be certain ability to already be able to move the extremity. So if there is a 40 to 50% movement of the extremity, then we can further enhance it and take it up to 70, 80%. That is how it would be. If the limb does not move at all, then this kind of therapy is not helpful. So what do we do in this therapy? Like you can see, the right hand, which is his good hand, has been covered in that black glove. And what the person is actually doing is holding a fork with his affected hand and trying to eat. So eating is the goal. Eating is a functional activity. Eating is an activity that has meaning to an individual. He's probably eating something that he really likes. You can see his hand is a little twisted, but he may have good elbow movement. So this is basically teaching him to get elbow movement with that activity. So the other lady, her good hand again, her right hand has been gloved, and she is wiping the table with her left hand. So this is constraint-induced therapy, where the good side is inhibited. You don't allow the good side to move, so the brain has to focus on working the affected side, on focus on improving and using the side that is more effective. Functional electrical stimulation. A lot of you may have heard about physiotherapy, current getting that kind of treatment. Now, a simple current that just moves the muscle is not of much benefit in patients who had a stroke and who have spasticity. But when we say functional electrical stimulation, what we do is we stimulate the muscles that would perform the action, that would actually perform the action, and we ask the individual to coordinate with that stimulation and do the action. So if I'm trying to pick up a glass, my muscle is stimulated. When the muscle is stimulated, I will pick up the glass with it. So the electrical stimulation is actually assisting me in performing this function. Why my brain will remember it? Because it is a function that is of importance to me. And that is how functional electrical stimulation can be used. It's not only used for the hand, but it is also used for the legs when the person is walking, train certain patterns of gait, train certain movements in gait. This is Mr. Hardeep, the one that was saying about that neuroplasticity when you just mentally focus and don't actually perform the movement, even then your brain will learn. That is very true. Research is being done on it, and it has also been proved to have effects. So this is mental practice. The elderly lady is listening to a recording wherein she has to focus and clearly imagine walking or moving her arms, whatever may be the case in her scenario. And she has to perform that movement or just very strongly imagine. This also has shown to be very, very effective in function, improving function. The only flip side of this therapy is that one, you should be able to focus very well. You should be able to imagine quite clearly. And this also takes a lot of time. The repetition for this, the way you spoke about neuroplasticity, the amount of repetition, the intensity, the number of times you have to do it is going to be quite high compared to you actually being able to do them. But this would help patients in whom strength is very less, so they get tired to actually perform the movement that many number of times. For them, this might be more. The other very simplistic therapy, and I really like to give this therapy to patients, is called mirror therapy. It's a very simple device. A mirror is placed. The person places the affected hand behind the mirror, so he can't see the affected side. Now, what he does is with his good side, with the hand which he can use, he performs movements. So when he performs movements and watches them in the mirror, he gets this feeling or this feedback that my affected hand is also moving. And not only this is a very positive feedback or a positive feeling for the individual, but also there are mirror neurons in the brain. There are neurons that when your right side works, those same neurons in the left side of your brain will also begin to get active. So these help in getting some recovery in the patients. Again, this is a long-term recovery, needs a lot of repetition and practice. So I usually just show this kind of setup to the person and ask them to perform it as much as possible. The good part of it being you won't get tired with this because you're performing it with the good side. You just need to be quite attentive while you're performing it, quite focused. And again, I will insist perform functional movements. Only opening and closing your hand might not be so useful. Like you can see, he's actually holding a ball. So he might try to turn and twist it, move it. He might use a spoon and try practicing eating, all of those. So does this help, Mr. Adi?
Yeah, I got it. Yes. Yeah.
These are few other technologically advanced devices where we can give weight bearing. So, like you can see, the upper limb is also weight bearing. It's holding onto a handle, either doing movements or it is on a table, weight bearing, doing some function, as well as the lower part of the body is supported and giving weight bearing on the lower extremity. There's another therapy that is called a treadmill training, and there can be body weight support here. Now, treadmill training helps in the person to help them for weight training. So, a person who's already walking or able to stand and need to improve walking, this kind of therapy can be used. The harness that is put, wherein your body is suspended in a harness, is because your legs are too weak yet to take the weight of your body. So if I only make such a person walk, it might be very difficult for them, or they might not be able to walk enough. So suspending them in a harness, taking away a little of that weight of the body, will allow the leg movement. And also, if you can see, the physiotherapist there is actually guiding and correcting the leg movement so that the step is placed correctly. There is a proper pattern of gait that can be done. Splints. Splints are very, very essential in how do you say, in preventing deformities, in not allowing that spasticity to take control of your limb. So in spasticity, if I stretch the hand suddenly, it will rebound and it will come back and get tight. But when I split the extremity and slowly stretch it, it will tend to remain in that position. So we tend to tell patients to use splints for a longer duration of time. Splints can be tied up and left on the hand for quite a long duration of time to make it more comfortable and more effective. These are a few images, and you can see the hands are not placed flat into a splint. This is not the position of the hand that we want. We always want a functional position of the hand, a hand that can hold things. So there's a ball, there is just an open, relaxed hand, this kind of grasp which will help you hold a book. And not to worry if you can't buy these because sometimes they're not available, which is completely fine. Take an object, take a small 500 ml, water bottle, cooling bottle, small one, empty it so that it's light, and use it. Tie a crepe bandage around the arm and use it to in order to splint the hand. So you can splint it holding a bottle, holding a ball. In various functional positions, the hand can be splint and it can be left on for hours as the patient is comfortable. Just make sure that the entire splint is comfortable. It's not causing any redness or hurting the person. This is the splint that we use for the lower extremity, for the legs. When the extremity, the tightness in the toes does not allow the heel to touch the ground, or there is too much of tightness at the knee. So that is when we would individually assess, figure out which of these is needed for the patient, and then we would prescribe them. These are some sprints which are available online, and this is when so persons with stroke would tend to sit either like this or tend to bend to one side. All of those things, their shoulders don't come into position, the body might be very slouched, you might have difficulty getting them to sit straight, even when you prop them on pillows. So these splints are good for that. It helps and gives support with the back and feedback so that the person can sit more straighter, which will help them maintain that symmetry that we were talking about. So the one on your left, the splint in blue at the shoulder, as you know, there's a lot of weakness and spasticity that builds around the shoulder of the affected person. Often this causes the shoulder to kind of slide down. It's called a subluxation or a dislocation of the shoulder. It causes pain. The more pain it causes in that shoulder, the more these movements of the person will be hampered. So we give them this kind of a splint. Previously, there used to be a splint where the hand would hang in front of the body. But that has now been discontinued because this is not a good functional position. It will further tighten the hand. So we just use it for the shoulder. There is one more to keep the elbow straight. It's quite simple and available also. This is the other one to keep the knee straight. This is the quad cane. So it has a quadruped base. It's a stick that a person with stroke can use. We might give them a walker at times if we need them to weight bear on both hands, but often we find that it's difficult for a person to move the walker ahead, and it's not very practical. So having a walker and a stick might not be so beneficial. Like we seen in the previous pictures, it's good enough to hold on to a chair for standing up and keep that symmetry. But while you're walking outside, a thing like this can help you with balance. Now we can talk about a few common positions that happen due to spasticity and how to manage them. In some cases, the spasticity is a lot at the knees. So the person's knee is like quite stiff and quite straight. So what do you do at that? Lying down on the bed and just bending the knee and straightening it out might not be so effective. So at that time, what we do is to get the person to be sitting on a chair. They hold something in front so that they are weight bearing, and they perform what is called as a sit to stand and a stand to sit onto this chair or this bed. So they sit and stand. Now, if you can see, that is causing a bending to the knee, and it is also a functional activity, which is a sit to stand that we perform. So the brain will learn, and slowly that stiffness can be done. Uh, Sometimes when you see patients lying on the bed, their the feet will go quite, like this, where the toes are pointing downwards. There's a lot of tightness in the feet. So instead of just stretching the foot, what you can do is get the person to be sitting in a way that the entire feet are on the floor, and give them that weight bearing on the feet. So this will help to better target that spasticity or the tightness in the legs. We spoke about symmetrical weight bearing. If the person is bending a lot to one side and getting them straight, getting them to rotate to both sides, that gives symmetrical weight bearing. If a person has a bent elbow, so what do you do? So you get them to bend elbow, you wait, and you push themselves up. So getting this movement to kind of up, that will help them to straighten the elbow. If you have a very twisted hand, okay. Um, Now attempts always are made to open the hand using the fingers. That's not a very good attempt. What you can do if your hand is usually the hand is always turned inwards. So what you need to do is you need to rotate the hand outwards from the forearm. So this is where you will rotate and you will find first that stiffness or that spasticity getting less. So you do these movements first. If you need to open your hand, you need to try and move in like this and open it gently, maintaining this curve and this arch of the hand. It's important to have this. Do not try to stretch out things. It's not a very good idea. We also discussed about splinting, withholding things, tying things, making them hold in this grasp and using that grasp, that kind of helps. There are these adaptations of things that can be used. So even if you have this much of a hand, but you have a good elbow function, you have a good shoulder function, just simple arrangements where you can put the comb in, put the food in, put the brush in, and make them be able to do these tasks themselves with a little assistance, with a little adaptation. That is also good because then their brain learns that okay, this can be done, this task can be done, and that's positive for the individual. Remember, only targeting spasticity will have lesser benefits. We need to work to reduce the spasticity and increase function. So when we work on both of these dimensions together, that's when as a person, as a family, as a patient, as a caregiver, you will have that sense of achievement, that sense of happiness that we are trying to give to you. So this should be the aim of your physiotherapy when you're working with physiotherapy. Okay, some more few exercises like we already discussed. So what happens if you splint the hand like this? You can do a number of activities that we spoke about. If your hand opens, if person's hand opens, which is quite good, and then we can splint it straight. And then usually we ask them to use that hand to bat a ball or use that as a movement. Keep that hand still, use that as a movement. You need to splint and get it to some function. Get weight bearing, which is standing and watching TV, which might be enjoyable to them, standing and watching out of the window, which might be enjoyable, instead of just standing and doing it as an exercise. When you stand and you can place your hands on the table or on a chair, so you get weight bearing on the feet as well as you get weight bearing in the hand. So that has double, a benefit. You're doing two things in the same exercise. When you practice stair climbing, you practice it with a railing. So you're holding things on both sides. Either you're holding the railing on one side, and on the good side you're holding the railing, and on the other side someone is manipulating your hand to keep it kind of straight and not allow the tightness to increase while you're practicing stair climbing. Like someone asked before, the triggers of spasticity. There's a cold increased spasticity. Yes, infections, stress, pressure ulcers, any kind of pain, even constipation. When we tie these splints, that's why we're so careful that the splint should not hurt the individual, should not cause any kind of redness. Because in that will increase spasticity. So you need to make the person as comfortable as possible to prevent fatigue. We be very mindful of fatigue. We try and force, them to do more and more repetitions because we want them to get better and better soon. But that might be counterproductive. So always balance out your fatigue with work, with rest. Balance out work and rest well so that you get a maximum benefit. How do you, as a caregiver, as someone at home, monitor this process? How do you check as to is it getting better? Is it getting worse? What is happening? One is you keep track of pain and discomfort that this spasticity is bringing on. The more relaxed, the more reduced spasticity is, the more comfortable you feel. Also, it's a good idea to take images and keep. You have a phone, just photograph the person while they are sleeping, photograph them while they are in a relaxed state, just relaxing, still not doing anything, and also when they're trying to do an activity. So you can keep these images, say, on the first of every month, and that will help you to monitor is there progress, are there deformities which are coming up, or is this kind of function improving, is the spasticity reducing? You will get a very objective idea, visual idea with these photographs. Your therapist will measure the range of the joint that is available. Your therapist will measure how much improvement in muscle strength has been there, so they will be able to understand how much of your recovery is happening. But more importantly, and at the crux of everything, you will measure function. Are you better? Are you getting better at the function that you are practicing? You're practicing walking. Are you getting better at that? Is your knee movement more smoother now during walking? Can you walk more symmetrical? Is the length of both your steps falling much more equal? So you'll measure all of this and see the improvements in your function, in your upper limb skills. We understand that stroke recovery is a tough part. It is like this long winding road. It has its own twists and turns, and it takes a lot out of families, out of caregivers, out of patients. So we always counsel them, ask them to be mindful, go slow, take your breaks. Understand that this is a long procedure. The recovery is going to take a while, so pace yourself for it. Become aware, like we said, become aware of what is causing spasticity to increase. Is it getting worse? Is it getting better? When you are doing these particular physiotherapy exercises, what is happening to your function? Are you learning it? Are you getting better at it? Add variation so that there is changes. You're not doing the same thing repeatedly. You add variation. You might find one thing works better than the other, and then you will learn a new thing also. So add variation, different environments, different methods. Do that. You need a lot of patience. Give it its time, and slow recovery will occur um, at its pace in its given time. Thank you so much. Any questions now? You can.
Yes, thank you very much, ma'am. That was very comprehensive. And yes, we all know that it is a long haul. Stroke is not something which one can expect results like a miracle. It does take time, it does take determination, and we need to have patience. We need to give it time. There are some questions in the chat. I think I'll take them first, and then probably what we will do, we'll open it up to all to address that. Uh, Jitendra saying, what is the difference between spasticity and stiffness, oblique tightness?
Okay. So, like we discussed, spasticity is when the signal between your nerves, between the brain and your body part are hampered. So, there is spasticity. Spasticity is movement dependent. So, when I move the limb quite, with a velocity, with a speed, that spasticity may seem to disappear. So what seems tight will seem relaxed. But what happens is the longer that this spasticity stays, the longer that this spasticity is there, it causes the muscles in the hand, to now become tightened and shorter. So the spasticity that initially originated from the brain and that was a problem that was coming from the brain has now caused a separate problem in the hand, wherein the hand has become tight. So that is when we talk about stiffness or tightness of the hand. That is a musculoskeletal thing, a problem for the hand, while spasticity is what is coming from the brain. I hope that that explains.
Okay, Bharatji is saying with physiotherapy, the amputated leg got functioning very fast, but the hand is very slow in recovery. Why is the hand so? This is something which we see many times. The finer movements or the hand movements, they tend to come much later. We do see that happening, but so-called major perhaps movements, the major muscles, is that to be expected?
So, like the brain has different areas of control. Okay, so a different part of the brain controls the hand, different part of the brain controls the leg, etc. In cases, and these different parts are also supplied by different blood vessels. Okay, so when it is the ACA or the anterior cerebral artery which is affected, at that point of time, those patients will have their leg recovery as slower, while their hand recovery is a little faster. In patients who have an MCA, which is a middle cerebral artery affection, in them the hand is majorly involved while they will start walking much earlier. This is not written in stone. This is just something that is kind of expected, anticipated, but depending on again how much area of your brain, which area of your brain has been affected, that is where you can picturize which part of the body will be more affected or which function will be more affected. So that is how it is. You
So
need
there
to
is a
work on.
possibility. There is a
Mhm.
possibility that the hand movement can come faster than the leg movement.
That
Can they?
happens in certain.
Okay. And I mean, I'm just thinking as a layman, suppose a stroke has occurred and
Mhm.
I can somehow map the damaged area of the brain. Can I anticipate what will come early, what will come late by looking at that mapping?
Yes, yes, that is usually what doctors do. Looking at, so when the MRIs are done, and in the MRI we see that okay, this and this areas are affected. That is when we can have an anticipatory picture of in which areas will this person be able to recover faster and better, while which areas will be slower. Again, like I said, in the brain, there's a lot of networking, there's a lot of intermapping. So it's not like one point, one thing. It's not a linear. It's a lot of interconnection, but a rough estimate is definitely
A rough estimate can be had. And another, Kimberly is asking, can you please let us know what is the
possible.
expected level of recovery
Mhm.
from spasticity with physio? What is the approximate duration of positive results seen in patients? I was a little confused. Can these positive results, can they diminish? Can they go away after some time? Does that
So
also?
this, okay. So this question has two parts. Let me address them one by one. The first question being, what is the level of improvement that you will see with physiotherapy, or for a given level of spasticity? Like I said, spasticity is not static in itself. I do not know whether the spasticity that I started out with today will it in itself remain that much a month later. Okay, I just know that today I started out with this much of spasticity, this much of tightness, and this much of a loss of movement. That is why a team approach is so essential to this. As a physiotherapist, on day one, you do your assessments, you chart out a baseline that this is the level of perfection, this is the function that we will work on, these are the goals that we will work on using all those methods of physiotherapy. You don't need to use one, you use a combination of them which is best suited for the patient, and you will chart out a progress plan for a month, maybe a month is a minimum. At the end of the month, you reassess. Is the person doing well? Is the person doing well enough? Is the spasticity coming under control or not? You speak back to the neurologist, speak back to the entire team to figure out if there is any need of changing medication. If, as a physiotherapist, you need to address any of those other circles that we spoke about, other methods of managing physiotherapy. So you don't do this in isolation. You keep the family and the patient at the center. You keep monitoring, you keep reassessing, and that is how you can chart out whether this spasticity is being. But to be very honest, the crux of this session was that don't target only spasticity, target an improvement in function. The more you see an improvement in function, the more satisfied you're going to be, the more that's what you want at the end of the day. You want to be able to do things you are doing before stroke. It might not be, unless you have a lot of pain and discomfort, you won't be happy if just the spasticity goes away. You want that spasticity reducing with an improvement in function. So that was the first question. And the second question that sir you said, can these improvements go away? So again, we discussed neuroplasticity where we said use it or lose it, use it and improve it. So if you do therapy for a particular point in time, you may stop therapy, but are you going to perform those actions? You still need to perform those actions in your daily life. The therapy happened to teach you eating, and then if you continue to eat by yourself through the next period, then you're not going to lose it. But if you stop therapy for eating and then somebody else continues to feed you, your brain will not remember that movement. You will use it again. Hence, it's important that whatever you have been taught by your therapist, all these activities that have been taught, you give it a chance to practice it daily, day in, day out, so that they set and they fix those pathways in the brain. Does that answer the question?
Okay. I'm also unmuting. People can also unmute themselves if they want to say
Right.
something. But please be a little mindful. Just unmute and then speak if you have any question, and then again go back to muting yourselves. That is something that you can do now. And okay, Shiburaj is saying that since 2001, actually, he is having left side paralysis. Left side is weak. He suffered with meningitis and left side paralysis in 2001. Is there any chance of recovery? I would assume that he's undergoing exercise, vagara, but the left side is still weak. What do you say, doctor? Will it improve beyond what it presently?
So, right. So 2001, so given that it's almost 20 years, you're saying that you have weakness. Again, my question to you would be, what are the functions that you are able to do at this moment, and what are the functions that you need to learn or you need to be able to do? It is not always that we need to work on the weakness or we need to work on the muscle strength. Physiotherapy, like we said, we do a lot of adaptive devices, we do a lot of modification of the environment so that the person is able to bridge that gap between not being able to do something, being able to do something. Okay, so using these adaptations and improvement is possible uh, depending on what you are doing as physiotherapy. You should continue with that, but also try
Can
and
you be
work
a
on
little
function
louder, please, ma'am?
specific.
I think people are losing you. Can you be a little louder?
Okay, is this more clearer now?
Yeah, yeah, I think so. Yeah. Mhm.
So what I said is, I cannot say for sure about the improvement in weakness, but I can definitely say you can try to focus on the functions that you want. Maybe you adapt the environment a little, adapt the task a little, and probably see where you can bridge that gap. Is that possible?
Okay. Okay. Another query that I had while I was looking at those machines, are they
Mhm.
available for rent, or they must be very expensive? How does one get?
Right.
Are they for rent or are they for purchase or at the
So
physiotherapy center?
the treadmill treatment that I was talking about, the treadmill training, the body weight treadmill training, it is best that you would go to a rehabilitation center and do it under the supervision of doctors there. Because again, since it is a treadmill, you will not just be put on the treadmill to walk, but there will also be monitors for ECG, blood pressure, things like that. Since you're doing them with someone with stroke, and there will be a physiotherapist making sure that your foot is placed correct with every step so that you learn the walking absolutely correctly. That is possible. So those will be available only in a rehabilitation center. When it comes to the standing frame, what I showed you is a very technically advanced standing frame. But we also managed to get patients to be able to stand weight bearing with a little help, maybe with two caregivers holding on to something. I showed you the knee splints, the splints around the knee. So we can use that around both the knees and then get patients to stand within the home environment. So maybe not exactly that for adult patients if it's not available to you, if you can't purchase it or rent it or it's not available, but other methods can definitely be used to get that people.
Okay, so as of now, at least those, let's say, treatments
Mhm.
are not happening in the physiotherapy center, like those machines, etc. Are they happening with the,
They are happening. At least in Mumbai, I'm aware of quite a few centers that have.
okay, okay, with proper COVID precautions, people are now
Yes.
getting into those. And roughly a session, if I may ask, how much does a session on those kind of machines cost approximately?
So I would have no idea. I would have to find out and get
Okay, okay. Okay, there was another question that I had, and I think others also had. We were talking a little bit earlier also about Botox and some treatments to do with that. Have you had any experience? Some people inject uh, Botox. Some people have this the pump system. Have you seen those kind of patients, and what has been your
and
experience?
that extensively worked with patients who have had Botox, also with patients who have had intrathecal baclofen pump. So let me explain again, come a little back to that and explain. Since this lecture was a physiotherapeutic lecture, I spoke a lot on the physiotherapy management of spasticity. But a physiotherapist does not manage spasticity as an alone entity. Like I said, we work with a team. So there will be situations if we feel that the spasticity is too severe to be managed only with physiotherapy or to be managed only with splinting, or that the amount of exercise and the amount of effort that a person needs to do to overcome that is quite extensive. Then we go back to the neurologist. The neurologist may say that okay, they might change the medication. Sometimes the medication might not be helping the patient, that particular patient, or the medication dose we might find is too much. At that point of time, we consider other methods. So Botox is used. Botox is a particular injection that is given into a muscle. So that helps to relax the muscle, basically. Once that muscle is relaxed, basically that spasticity or the tightness from that muscle is taken away. That is what Botox has done. But now what you do, all you don't need just a relaxed hand. Now, since your hand is relaxed, it is better able of performing function. So now the Botox has relaxed your hand, has helped you to open out your hand. Now use your hand for function. So there is, so we scrutinize which are the clients that would be benefiting from Botox. Again, if Botox is given to a client who has the strength and the ability to move his hand, then it might be more beneficial. So this whole entire study and this decision is taken very minutely for Botox, even for the intrathecal vaccine pump. That is something that helps a person who has a lot of spasticity all throughout the body helping. So it helps them to relax. Once that vaccine pump helps them to relax, we train them to now be able to use their relaxed body for function. We train their brain to now learn function. That is how these techniques are used. So it is not individual, it's not a one person job, but it is a team approach, and it's always best to work in a team when you're managing a person with stroke and who has spasticity, taking care of them.
So let's say if you talk of the pump, ma'am, let's say in a year, how many people do you see with an IFB? And they generally
So
are more
the
effective.
criteria for getting an intrathecal bacterial pump are quite, they have a very strict criteria. They also do a trial to see whether people are benefiting or not benefiting.
Okay, they do a trial first. Okay.
They do a trial test. Yes, definitely. So when you go to your surgeon and you say, okay, I want to consider this intrathecal bacterial pump, what they'll do is they'll assess you first, and they will understand whether this will give you any benefit. They will explain to you the pros and cons. Then they will give you a small dose without putting the pump, but they'll give you the small dose and check whether it's helping you, whether you're relaxing, whether your body's accepting that kind of treatment. And then they go in for the final procedure. So definitely it has all of these steps. Given that there is a lot of people have a lot of queries, there is also this. It's an expensive procedure. There is also a lot of aftercare of this procedure. There are patients do not prefer it, or we have very few recommendations that we are also going through. but yes, it's also occurring. So it's very case dependent.
Okay, so obviously it depends upon the person and what is his level of spasticity at the time and whether he can afford it also. Because as you say, this is an expensive. Uh, let,
And there will be maintenance also for that. For
there'll
the
be further
future,
maintenance also for that. Mhm.
you need to use.
Okay, fine, fine. I think any other questions anyone has, because we're already at 5:15. If anyone wants to say anything, you can simply unmute yourself now, and please feel free to put a query or a comment. Uh, we'll be here for a little more while if anyone has any queries.
અને આપણે ખર્ચા નીકળી જાય આવડા એસી બેસી ચાલુ થઈ જાય પછી વાંધો નહીં અને એસી માં નાખવાના રૂપિયા નથી.
Sorry, sir, you will have to be a little bit more
એ વાત છે
clearer because
આમાં એસી કઈ જોઈ નહીં સીધું કાઢ નાખો.
sorry, we did not hear you or we cannot understand you, I'm afraid. And are you calling from Ghana, Mr. Adams? Is it Mr. Adams? No, we lost him. Okay, anyway, anyone wants to put something in the chat, they can feel free to put in the chat box also. Okay, I think we are done for this session. Thank you very much, ma'am. That was very informative and very comprehensive, if I may say so. And I'm sure there'll be other questions, etc., that we will get as time passes. And you are in our group also. And I do hope and I look forward to whenever, to the best of your time and availability constraints, if you could address them. That will
Sure, sure. Thank you for giving
yeah,
me this
that will be
opportunity,
great.
and feel free to connect with any doubts or anything.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, everyone, for being here. Stay safe and stay well. So we are closing this meeting now. Thank you very much, all. Thanks for watching this video. Hope it was useful for you. For further discussions and to join our future web meets via WhatsApp, click on your mobile to strokesupport.in/r/meet. You will be contacted and then added in. Also, if you wish to help us organize future web meets, including making presentations which could be of interest to the stroke affected and their families, please do contact us via https://strokesupport.in/events. Again, the link is strokesupport.in/events. Thank you. At the end, we do request you again to share this video to raise stroke awareness and encourage and help the stroke affected. Thank you very much again.